I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our lives, from our community relations to our business relations, to our intimate relationships, to our politics. Every aspect of our lives is impacted by the character crisis that we've been in for the past several decades. And it's what I've spent my professional career writing and talking about at workshops and seminars across the country, and in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller, and many regard as the definitive guide to dealing with the manipulators in your life. And also my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, the book that explains all the disturbed characters that you're going to encounter in your lifetime: narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, manipulators, all kinds of different disturbed characters, and how to deal with them, and especially what to look for in the way of help when you go trying to get help. And then my book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, about how genuine faith in action can truly save. And lastly, my book with Dr. Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? The Toxic Relationships Survivor's Guide to a guide to thriving and surviving in this crazy character disordered world of ours. And our soon-to-be upcoming second book together with Dr. Armistead, How the 10 Commandments of Character, How to Lead a Significant Life. Those life lessons that must be learned, whether we learn them early or we have to learn them later in life. Those important life lessons that have to be learned for us to turn out to be decent people. And if you want to join the conversation tonight, we are a live broadcast this Sunday evening, June the 4th, 2017. So if you want to join the conversation, the number to call is area code 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. And I'll be happy to take your call. We're going to be talking about relationships tonight. Especially we're going to be talking about, as I posted on my blog at manipulative-people.com, which is now combined with my website at drgeorgesimon.com. Either URL will take you to the same place. We're going to be talking about the material that I've been posting up on my blog, namely how relationships can really help a character grow. Problem is that in order to make an intimate relationship really work, you've got to have a certain degree of character to start with, a certain amount of decency of character. Otherwise, the relationship just can't work. So, in that regard, if you have a situation you'd like to talk about, if you have a question you want to ask, maybe the article or maybe the past articles on the blog have prompted your curiosity. In any case, if you want to join the conversation in any way, maybe you're a therapist out there who has a situation you want to discuss, doesn't matter. Give us a call at area code 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. And I'll be happy to take your call. Well, I just got back from another 3-seminar tour in Pennsylvania. Went to Harrisburg, to Scranton, and to Philadelphia last week. And folks, I'm happy to say actually that I'm taking some time off now. I ended the grueling workshop tour that I've been on. I will be going back out on the road for back-to-back tours in August, in mid to late August, into the New York City and New Jersey area. I'll have more details about that. There'll be more details posted on my website at drgeorgesimon.com and my blog at manipulative-people.com. You can also find information on these workshops at Vine Education. That's VYNE.com. VineEducation.com is now the new owner of what was CrossCountryEducation.com. Cross Country Education has been the sponsor of my workshops since earlier last year. And so at any rate, I went on this tour in Pennsylvania, and I have to say, the reception I got was really extraordinary, especially in Philadelphia and especially in Scranton. I was really edified. Not only were the clinicians attending really with it and really keying into and jiving with very well the perspectives that I had to give them, but their level of insight about the nature of today's problems and how we have to intervene with them to achieve any modicum of success was really very edifying. It was also very edifying to find so many people so familiar with my work in the first place. The downside of that is when I go to these workshops, I always hope to sell a few books, and in actually two of the locations, so many people already had books that there wasn't any need for any. So I ended up lugging a bunch back home. But that's no matter. What really matters more than anything else, is that clinicians are aware of the nature of the problem, what really makes most folks tick these days, and how to intervene with some kind of effectiveness. You see, character disturbance is a very, very different phenomenon than most professionals were taught to deal with. So mental health professionals come into the situation trying to help folks develop better character, but usually equipped only with perspectives and methods designed to help those individuals who already have basically good character but are dealing with unreasonable levels of guilt and shame. They're literally worrying themselves to death, making themselves sick with unnecessary concern, with over concern about things. And these methods are ineffective when it comes to dealing with those folks among us who are not quite bothered enough by the things that they let themselves do. So, to make a long story short, these folks that attended the workshops were very open, and I hope to hear from several fairly soon, because I make it a point at every workshop that I do. I make it a point to ask clinicians who are attending to send me information about themselves and their practice and whether or not they want referrals, because I get so many emails every week from folks who want to either thank me for making them feel not crazy anymore, because now they are validated in the gut hunch they had about their toxic relationship partner, or they're asking me to please recommend someone in their area for help, either because they don't know where to turn or because they've turned somewhere in the past and been bitterly disappointed. They experienced what we call therapy-induced trauma, which means that the experience made them feel even worse, either because the clinician didn't seem to get it with respect to what their manipulative spouse or relationship partner was all about, or the manipulative partner was so skilled at the art of impression management, at making a favorable impression, that they basically snowed the therapist, pulled the wool over their eyes, a classic wolf in sheep's clothing kind of scenario. And this only made the relationship partner feel worse for the effort to try and get help in therapy, and only made them feel worse about their situation and very disappointed in and pessimistic about the chances for getting help from the mental health system. So I'm hoping to hear from folks through my blog who attended the workshops, who may either want to work with victims of toxic relationships, help empower them using the tools and methods that I recommend, or they might even want to work with those individuals with significant character disturbances. So I'm hoping to hear from as many folks as possible, and I'm hoping to hear from you out there tonight. If you have a question or two you want to ask, a story you want to share, something you think will be of interest to folks, we're going to be talking tonight about relationships. In particular, we're going to be talking about the subject that I broached in my blog post of last Friday on my blog at manipulative-people.com. We're going to talk about the relationship between and the connection between a healthy, intimate relationship and growing in character. And if you want to join that conversation, or you have something else you want to share, give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. Well, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about this article, and that will be the start of a new short series that I posted on the blog at manipulative-people.com this past Friday. You know, times have really, really changed in the last several decades. There was a time, not that long ago, when people regarded the entire enterprise of marriage as an entirely different kind of relationship. These days, so many people enter marriage with the notion that, I think I really love this person. I think for practical reasons that it will work out best for us to be together. Maybe we can do better economically. Maybe we can continue to have a good time together. It's a sure way to have intimacy. It beats pounding the pavement every night, going out to places looking for someone. Affords a little stability. And then if it doesn't work out, well, what the heck? We can always just throw in the towel, no hard feelings, and move on. And that's how a lot of folks approach the whole enterprise these days. And it wasn't that long ago that it was very, very different. It also wasn't that long ago that divorce was a rare occurrence. And as a matter of fact, it was regarded as quite scandalous. There were some high-profile divorces. Always seemed to be in Hollywood, sometimes in politics, and it was scandalous. And it was almost a disqualifier for a politician to have a divorce in their background. You see, there was a time when character mattered so much. This is something I talk about at length in my workshops when we talk about, actually, there's a section in my workshops where I talk a lot about how self-esteem develops. And I use the current research to bolster some of the arguments that I've made for many years in my writing. I realized many, many years ago, when I was first doing my clinical case study research, I realized that self-esteem and self-respect are two very, very different things. And they derive from different things as well. You see, self-esteem is that kind of intuitive assessment that we make about what we've got going for us in the way of innate talents and abilities, in the way of physical attributes, etc., etc. And a researcher by the name of Brummelman and Brummelman's colleagues have done several studies, praise studies, wanting to know the effects of heaping praise on children, primarily, and wanting to note the difference about the effects of various kinds of praise. And one thing he noted is that you can indeed praise somebody for the wrong things. And this is something that I noticed very, very early on in my clinical case study research. You see, if you praise too often little Johnny or little Susie for the very things that they can't legitimately claim credit for, things like their talent, their looks, their intelligence, any of their innate abilities or physical attributes, their coordination, dexterity, any of those things that pretty much came along with either the genetic makeup or other environmental factors, that those things that nature gave them, basically. If you ask them to value those things, you praise them for those things, you give them all kinds of positive stroke for those things, they will readily claim ownership of those things, and they'll also tend to overvalue them, and they may develop quite a big head about things. Brummelman also says that if you try to build up a young person who's already struggling with their self-image. They don't think very much of themselves, and you try to build them up by telling them how smart they are, or how good looking they are, or how talented they are. In other words, you stroke them for all those natural attributes. They might not actually be built up at all. They might actually feel worse than they did before, because at some level, they're aware that they really can't claim credit for any of those things. But if we want to build what we really should all try to build in our young folks, if we want to build self-respect, we do that by giving credit for what we call meritorious conduct, which means when little Johnny or Susie does something with the talents and gifts that they've been given that benefits the greater good. And it's in that department that we're really remiss as a society so many times. And so I talk in my workshops about what we've done culturally, about the kinds of things that we draw attention to and seem to praise and reinforce so much. I use as an example what goes on in the sports world. And I make the point that it was not that long ago. It was not that many decades ago. It really wasn't. First of all, there was a time not that long ago when athletes didn't make the obscene levels of money that they make today. But that aside, there was a time, and not that long ago, when it didn't matter to an owner or a coach or to the organization, it did not matter how much raw talent a person could possibly bring to the occasion or to the organization. If there was even a chance, if there were a chance that the individual could bring disgrace to the team because their character was not stellar, because their character had a significant flaw, and therefore there was a high risk they were going to do something really stupid, potentially embarrassing, potentially illegal, whatever the case may be, then regardless of how much talent they had, they were not invited onto the team because the team cared more about character than just possibly winning. Now, I know that sounds hokey, but it wasn't that long ago that was the cultural norm. So you can see that only in a few decades has the cultural climate changed it just very significantly. Today, we throw all kinds of money at and give all kinds of attention to and bestow all kinds of accolades on the gifted. And we don't demand anything of character. And then we're shocked when these very gifted, talented folks bring dishonor upon themselves and upon their teammates. It's even getting harder and harder these days, given our moral relativism, to define dishonor. Because so many folks will do things that are either illegal, unethical, or just crude. And they're not seen, those actions are not seen as all that dishonorable. As a matter of fact, we've come to expect certain things. The bar has been so lowered And yet the money, the reinforcement, the attention that we throw at the talented among us is just, it's obscene. And it's character diminishing. It's a great way to ensure that our character decline that we've been experiencing for the past several decades will only continue. So I talk about that at the workshops. And I talk about the need that we have in our day and time to, as my friend Tracy Shorn always likes to say, to make character cool again. It's really time that we do. You know, we define character as that ethical and moral side of personality. And personality is defined by the habitual way that a person tends to see things and to do things, how they see the world and prefer to cope or interact with the world. That's what defines personality. And we live in very, very dangerous times because there are people on this planet who see things in grossly distorted ways, tremendously antisocial ways. We saw a great example of it, unfortunately, once again in Britain just yesterday. This kind of stuff is only going to continue, and it's going to get worse. Today, the group calling itself ISIS claimed responsibility for these attacks. They were able to, as people put it these days, radicalize some sympathizers and convince them that it would be a noble thing to mow down people in the streets. And what would be the criteria? What would be the criteria? What were these people crossing the bridge? What would be the criteria for these folks shopping in one of the shopping areas? What would be the criteria about why they should deserve death? What's the criteria? Well, as any dominance-seeking personality will tell you, and that's who heads up these organizations. These are the archetypal dominance seekers among us. They've been with us since the dawn of time. Their character is markedly flawed because they do the three things that disturbed characters always do. You know, we have been told that the relationship between power and character goes the way that Lord Darfor Acton is famously quoted as saying, and that is that power itself tends to corrupt, and that absolute power corrupts absolutely. But these folks, these militant ideologues, they didn't have power to start with. These corrupt dominance seekers do what every corrupt character, what every character disturbed person on the planet, and that I talk about in all my workshops and in my books and on my blog and website, they do the same thing. They have the same three relationships with power. Number one, They rabidly seek power. They have an unquenchable thirst for power. They're after power from the start. They lust for power. That's probably the best term. They lust for power. Lust itself being an evil, but the lust for power being an even greater evil. So they lust for power. Second, they lust for power for its own sake. And you see the proof of that when they actually succeed in dominating, because they're never happy. As soon as they secure power, they're not satisfied. They're always wanting more and more. And they're always wanting to wield it more indiscriminately, even on those that they have successfully conquered. You can check this out historically. So the character corrupt among us, they rabidly seek power. They seek power for its own sake. And lastly, they inevitably abuse it when they get it, because they lack care and concern about the welfare of human beings. They'll say that their whole purpose is to more appropriately care for human beings. But that's not their purpose. They lie, and they know they lie. Their purpose is power for its own sake, and they will inevitably abuse it when they get it. I was really troubled, really troubled a few days ago when I heard some commentary on a program. Now, I'm going to get into some very tender territory here, folks, and I want to be very, very clear about this. Many millions of people practice various faiths, adhere to various religious tenets, and exercise their religious faith. Many millions of folks do that, whatever the faith may be, with the sincerest of purposes. They do so to grow personally, to build a right relationship with their conceptualization of the ultimate power. And they're good people. They're decent people. But, here's what I was troubled by. The commentator on this program said, we're talking about the amount of control and dominance and domineering character that exists in some countries under autocratic rule, and especially under theocratic rule. And they talked about how it is still a capital crime in some countries to change your mind about the faith you want to practice. And so therefore, apostasy is a government-sanctioned murderous offense. In other words, it's okay to kill you. Matter of fact, if the government doesn't do it, it's okay for anybody in your family to do it. It's considered an honor. And sometimes the government looks just the other way. As a matter of fact, most of the time it does. And what bothered me was the extraordinary politically correct terminology in saying that. Because we were not talking about, I can't think of any countries, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Can't think of any countries. I mean, I've done my homework on this, where it is a capital offense, where the state can execute you for, say, renouncing the Buddhist tradition, or renouncing the Hindu tradition, or renouncing any form of Christianity. I don't know of any state where it is a capital crime to do that. So apostasy itself isn't even the crime. It's only apostasy against involving one particular religious faith. And then also to say that there are only a few countries on the planet where this is true is to make it a strictly political issue and to take the religious ideology out of it. How many countries have these laws? How many countries would turn the other way, just look the other way, if a family member decided to kill another family member for, say, renouncing being a Jehovah's Witness, or a Seventh-day Adventist, or an atheist? We have to, without being prejudicial, and without being bigoted, and without being prone to paint with an overly broad brush and overgeneralize, we have to acknowledge that the problems related to these ideologies and to the horror being spread right now lie primarily with one kind of religious conviction. And I hear often that these warmongering warlords, these archetypal dominance seekers, have commandeered a religion that, by nature, the religion and its statutes are nothing but peace. And then I'm confronted with the reality that it is a state-sanctioned event to take your life. If you have come to the conclusion that practicing the tenets of that particular faith are not in your best interest, and that you'd like to follow a different path, somehow, to me, this does not speak of peace. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody can correct me on this. And what does this all have to do with character? Well, I'll tell you. This dominance-seeking drive has been part of our evolutionary makeup since the dawn of time. Since the dawn of time. And the mark of real character, of real virtue, lies in two things. One, recognizing that we all have within us this archetypal energy. There's a great Tears for Fears song. The band was influenced in writing the song. They were influenced by a visit that they made to Zurich and the Carl Jung Institute, because Jung was famous for arguing that if we don't face our shadow side, all of those things that are in us, all the lasting legacy of our genetic makeup, our evolutionary history, and the will to dominate is one of those things. If we don't recognize that, we can get into really big trouble. If we try to disown it, pretend it isn't there, it will come back to bite us in the rear. So the mark of good character, mark of solid character, is in first recognizing that these aspects are in us all. But secondly, for some greater good, for some more noble purpose, subordinating our will, including our will to power, including our will to dominate, to some higher one. You know, I'm going to be changing, as I mentioned before, the direction and the tone of this program over time. Up until now, from the program's inception, I've been talking about, and the opening music and closing music to the program speaks to this very issue. I've been talking about the interrelationship of freedom and character. The premise of our great free society has been from the beginning this: you give folks with a solid moral compass, with a solid ethical foundation, you give folks like that free rein, maximum freedom from government intrusion into their lives, maximum freedom from unnecessary restrictions, limitations, disincentives to produce. You give folks with that kind of character free rein, and they will do incredible things. And in doing those incredible things, they will inevitably create opportunities for others. They'll inspire others. They'll make opportunities for those who aren't quite as gifted in those same areas as they are. And it works the other way, too, unfortunately. When you have too many folks among us who are of deficient character, who lack the internal moral compass, who lack the ethics, who are prone to abuse the liberties that they enjoy, use those liberties and those freedoms as an opportunity to exploit and to pillage and to self-gratify at the expense of everyone else without compunction, without principle. When that happens, there is constant pressure on government and all other entities trying to help sustain a civil society to restrict freedom, to pass laws, to put into place structures, limits, and boundaries to help ensure the well-being of the masses. And whenever we lose freedom, the chances for prosperity go with it. Chances for real prosperity go with it. And that's what's been happening to us. So since the beginning of this program, that's been the focus. And I'm very happy that over this past Memorial Day weekend, several of you out there wrote me to ask for permission, to ask for the music and to ask for the performance tracks, and performed the song that you hear at the beginning and the end that my wife and I co-wrote, America, My Home, formerly Anthem. Formally, the title is, the formal title is Anthem for the Millennium. We wrote it at the turn of the new millennium, back in 1999. But because of its subtitle and because of the popularity it gained after 9/11, it has been affectionately referred to most of the time by its subtitle, America, My Home. And I'm very happy that folks saw fit to help carry its message, that freedom and responsibility, freedom and character are inextricably intertwined. They're interdependent. And we have to restore individual character again for there to be a great collective character in our country, and only then and only then will we be truly great again. We have a president who says he wants to make us great again. We'll be great again when we're great in character. That's just the way it is. It's the way it's always been. Our greatness has never been in our military might or our economic clout, which we have substantial of, but it's always been in the character of people who uphold our very best ideals and live those ideals out. That's where character has always resided. And that's where greatness has always resided. And so that's the message, and that's been the message of this program. But we want to take things in a new direction. We want to take things down the direction of relationships, because that's where it all begins. We want to do our best to nurture healthy relationships, intimate relationships between intimate relationship partners, and community relationships, business relationships, political relationships. We want all of that to be healthy. And that's going to build us back into a great, truly great society. Right now, there are far too many of us disenfranchised. struggling, not participating. And all that's really necessary for the triumph of this evil is for the decent people among us to do nothing about it. You've heard that before. So the direction we're going to be taking with this program is going to be relational. It's going to be relational. What we do, how we conduct ourselves, matters. Character matters. It's the foundation. How we think about things matters. How we relate to others matters. And how we think about things and relate in an ethical, moral way matters. And that is what really defines character. That's why character matters. So the program is going to be less focused on this interrelationship between freedom and character, and much more focused on relationships. That's one of the reasons why the current series of articles on the blog at manipulative-people.com, drgeorgesimon.com, either of those URLs will take you to the exact same site. And in that regard, I would ask that you mosey on over to the site and read the latest article, and that you keep up with it, and that you stay tuned for more on that subject, because we will be talking more about it. And I'm hoping that we will also find a suitable new theme song. And I'm still hoping also that we'll get some good suggestions from the listening audience out there. I still haven't had any good suggestions from the listening audience about a new theme song that would speak to character in a relational sense and the importance of good character to relationships. You know, that's also the heart of our spiritual development. So I'm going to be also in this new effort incorporating more spiritual dialogue into the program. We cannot be decent people unless we are ethically, morally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically healthy. And to define what that kind of health is all about is actually relatively straightforward. It's just very, very difficult for us human beings to do. The straightforward part is we're called to be loving. And that's not an emotion. That's not a sentiment. That's a behavior. It's a dedication, and it's rooted in principle. It's rooted in the principle that if we're not about the business of caring for one another, we will surely be about the business of destroying one another. And boy, have we been doing a good job of that. How we're going to transform this world and how we're going to make ourselves safe is one heart and mind, one soul at a time. And it starts with us. It starts with us. You know, there's that song, Man in the Mirror. I'm starting with the man in the mirror, asking him to change his ways. Love is infectious. And sometimes it takes an awful lot of it to really pierce the wounded, the guarded, the betrayed, the hardened, the aggrieved heart. Sometimes it takes an awful lot of love to cut through. But that's the only thing that can cut through. The great teachers, the great leaders of movements that have changed the face of everything have taught us that. From Martin Luther King to Gandhi to Jesus of Nazareth, to the Buddha, they've taught us the same thing. We're not going to solve our problems by flexing muscle, by threatening to beat each other up. We've been doing that for eons now. How's that working out for us? We'll solve our problems when we make this world a safe, nurturing place. And we have it within our power to do that. We have enough knowledge now. We have plenty of knowledge. Matter of fact, we have so much knowledge that it's very dangerous, so much knowledge that the knowledge in the wrong hands could literally destroy us all. The knowledge of just how to use the right amount of plutonium and the right kind of device and just the wrong, misguided hands could be devastating. But the knowledge that we do have to generate enough food, to provide enough clean energy, to grow enough crops, to build enough shelter. That knowledge is with us now. We have the technology. We have the technology and the wherewithal and the means to feed the world 3 times over, and yet people are starving. The problem is in our mindset. And because our mindset and our values and our way of dealing with life is what defines our character, that means the problem's in our character. We'll be talking more about this in the weeks to come, and more about the importance of relationship, and especially about spiritual development within a relationship. As the face of this program begins to change, I invite you to join us. Join in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on UCY.tv. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again next week on another edition of Character Matters. Good night.
Ozzy Skateboard